Hello, my lovely Padawans, and welcome, fans of Yu-Gi-Oh, to this, to yet another video that I'm making on Yu-Gi-Oh. And today, as you've probably read by the title, I'm gonna make and give you a rundown of my PSV deck. That is Pharaoh's Servant. That's the fourth ever released TCG pack, main pack, main set of cards, and I believe this one was not made by the new kind of way that we make things. I think the next one was made that way, probably. But basically, yeah. I think from the 5th or the 6th set we changed it so that there's this website. I'm gonna explain in a future video specifically on that website. But today I'm going to give you a deck profile of my PSV deck, Pharaoh's Servant. It's pretty straightforward, nothing fancy, using the cards from the set that I like, and of course every other person may vary in the deck that he's made. Of course, you may see some cards that are banned. That's because I think from the 5th set we decided to go with current ban list so that we don't get any banned cards. But yeah, right from the get-go we have 3 copies of Sky Scout, which used to be called Harpy's brother. That's a normal level 4 winged beast with 1800 attack points, nothing too fancy. Then 2 copies of Darkfire Soldier number 2. So these 5 cards are pretty much my standard beaters. Then I have 3 copies of Island Turtle, so that's one of my main defensive mechanisms. Then the boss monster of the deck, which is Jinzo. I've got 3 copies of Jinzo. Why 3? Because, well, the faster I get Jinzo out, the better. And if my opponent, and me of course, cannot use trap cards, that would be the best. So that's 3 copies of Jinzo. Then I have 1 Defiant Mega Cyber. That's a very neat card because you can specially summon it on the field if your opponent has at least 2 monsters. At least 2 more monsters on the field than you do, so it can be a lifesaver. It's a level 6 Dark Warrior with 2200 attack. It's a pretty decent card. Then people often say that offense is the best defense, am I right? And 2 copies of Goblin Attack Force is what I use. Basically that's a level 4 Earth Warrior monster with 2300 attack points. But it's got a drawback that if you attack with it, it's gonna be it's gonna change its position to, at the end of the battle phase to defense mode, and unfortunately it has 0 defense, so you should be very, very careful as to when you're going to use the Goblin Attack Force for attacking. Then I have 3 copies of Gearfried the Iron Knight. That's a really, really neat level 4 Earth Warrior monster. Yeah, its effect is so that that any equipment spells put on it are destroyed, but you don't care about that much because it's got 1800 attack points, just like Sky Scout, aka Harpy's brother, and it's a level 4 monster. Then 2 copies of Bubonic Vermin. I wanted to go with 3, but yeah, you can go with 3. Basically, what it does, it's when it's flipped, you can special summon 1 other Bubonic Vermin from your deck in face down defense position. So you set 1, it gets destroyed, right? First turn you set 1, it gets destroyed, it gets to special summon another one of itself, and then the next turn you get to tribute summon Jinzo. That's basically the only use I have for these guys. Then we go to the spell cards. Pretty neat spell cards. Nobleman of Extermination allows you to select, destroy, and remove from play 1 face down spell or trap card. And if it was a trap card, both players must remove from play all copies of that certain spell trap card. So let's say I use the Nobleman on, let's say, my enemy's face down and it's Call of the Haunted. and let's say I've already used Call of the Haunted prior to this moment, and they get all their other Calls of the Haunted destroyed. Then the Shallow Grave, basically each player special summons a monster from their graveyard, one monster in face down defense position, so that can be an easy way to get back, let's say, an Island Turtle or a Bubonic Vermin or whatever. The Nobleman of Crossout is the same as Nobleman of Extermination, only that it works with monsters, so you have to select a face down monster, and if it's a flip effect monster, you remove from play all the monsters with the same name in both players' deck. So the enemy can have anything. They can have a Bubonic Vermin per se, they can have whatever, like I don't know, anything. And Prohibition is pretty straightforward. When you activate it, you declare a card name, and that card name effect cannot be used after this card is activated. So I can activate this and say Jinzo will not have his effect, right? And it's gonna be a standard 2400 beater. But if there was a Jinzo on the field before I activated Prohibition, right, that Jinzo has his effects. So you should bear in mind that the activation of Prohibition, the effect of Prohibition, does not work on that same card before, which was summoned or used or activated before Prohibition was activated. So the next spell card is Ground Collapse. That's a very, very, very old card as well. Basically, you you select two monster card zones on your opponent's on any field, and they cannot be used to summon. Basically, like, you can make your opponent have from 5 to 3 slots, spot spaces for monster summoning. Then we have Premature Burial. It's just like Monster Reborn, but it acts like a equipment spell card as well. So you sacrifice 800 life points to select a monster from your graveyard and special summon it in face-up attack position with this card equipped. So if your opponent destroys this card and not the monster, both the card and the monster gets destroyed. So it's like a pretty okay version of Monster Reborn, although it's, as you can see, it's been banned in TCG for quite a while now. The next card is one copy of 7 completed. That's very, very straightforward. For my deck, it's supposed to give my Jinzo a 700 attack boost, because Jinzo is a machine monster, and that's an equipment spell for either 700 defense or attack points for a machine type monster. Then 2 copies of Fairy Meteor Crush. Now that's one of my most favorite vanilla old school equipment spell cards. What it basically does is it makes your targeted monster, the monster you've equipped this card to, it gives it a piercing damage capability. So any monster whose defense is lower than your monster's attack, you get the difference in piercing damage towards your opponent. So that's awesome, because at that time there were no piercing damage monsters, and this was the only way to get piercing damage, to completely not only destroy the defenses of your opponent, but also get damage to them. Then I got 1 copy of Chain Destruction. That's a neat trap for the time. Now it's kind of not that useful, but basically when a monster or monsters with 2000 or less attack are summoned, you can target one of them and destroy all the cards with that name in the controller's hand and deck. So your opponent summons for, say, a Sky Scout, you activate this card, it destroys it and every other Sky Scout in your opponent's deck, which is very good. Of course, if it was a real life, situation, the deck is of course shuffled, because you have to your opponent would have to search for the cards and find them. Then 1 copy of Time Seal, which is one of those banned cards. It basically makes your opponent skip their next draw phase, and it's if you have more than 1 in your deck, that would be pretty game breaking, so that's why it's banned. Then 1 copy of Light Force Sword. Now Light Force Sword is a very nice trap card. What it basically does, it selects a random card from your opponent's hand and banishes it for 4 turns. So during your next 4 standby phases, your opponent's next 4 by phases, after those next 4 opponents you activate it on your turn, let's say, and then it's your opponent's turn. For the next 4 turns they cannot use that card. Then 1 copy of Shift. It's a nice. Why can't I speak today? It's a very neat. I wanted to say neat and nice at the same time. Anyway, it's a very neat little trap card, which basically, when you activate it, you can activate this card when your opponent designates 1 monster on your side of the field as a target for any effect, a spell, trap, or battle attack. So you can switch that target to another monster on your side of the field, which is very awesome. Let's say they're attacking your Jinzo, but you don't want your Jinzo to die, and you switch the attack or whatever to, let's say, Sky Scout, and then your Jinzo is undamaged. Then 2 copies of Dust Tornado. That's even used today in some decks. Basically, you select a spell card on your opponent's field, destroy it, and that doesn't mean negate it, so if you can select it for destruction, they can still activate it. And when you do that, when you destroy the target, then you can set another spell or trap card from your hand. So that's like an MST with a bonus. And then a copy of Enchanted Javelin. Basically, it gives you life points up to the amount of a single attack. Let's say your opponent attacks you with Jinzo, you activate Enchanted Javelin, and you get 2400 life points. Then 1 copy of Gift of the Mystical Elf. It's a nice, again, it's a life point gain trap card, which allows you to increase your life points by 300 points for each monster on the field. So that counts yours and your opponent's, so that's up to 3000 life points. Another life point gainer is Solemn Wishes. It's a continuous trap card which gives you 500 life points for each time you draw a card or cards. So you have to be very careful. It doesn't give you 500 life points per card. So every 1 time that you draw a card, be that your normal draw or an effect, it gives you life points. It doesn't give you per card. Then you have Imperial Order, which is again one of those banned cards. Basically, it's a continuous spell trap. It's a continuous trap card, which allows you first. You have to pay 700 life points during each player's standby phase to keep it active. So while this card is in the spell and trap zone, negate the effect of all spell effects. So basically, it's a very heavy, tall card on your life points, but no spell cards can be activated. Then we have Light of Intervention. It's another continuous trap card which makes it so that none of the players can set monsters in defense position. And then Call of the Haunted is very straightforward. It's a continuous trap that brings back 1 monster from your graveyard, special summons it in attack position, and if this card is destroyed, the monster is also destroyed, and if the monster is destroyed, this card is also destroyed. So I hope you like this deck profile. We're gonna have more of these, because I came back to making these decks once again. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you next time, and may the Force be with you always.